So you're a business owner who is considering investing money into your business. Now, that money could be coming from your savings, or it could be coming from borrowed money. You could be borrowing this money to invest in your business. And whilst this video cannot be financial advice, I'm not giving you the advice to borrow money or not borrow money. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you a real life case that I'm dealing with at the moment, where a client has come to us and said, I think I'd like to invest £75,000 into my business because I think it will solve some problems. And I'm going to borrow this money, in his case, from a private investor. It could be a bank. It could be from your family. It could be from your own savings. The fact is, you're going to take a chunk of money and put it into your business. There is a series of questions that you should be asking yourself, some research about your own data that you should be looking at to help you arrive at a sensible conclusion as to whether this is the right thing or the wrong thing. As I said, this is not financial advice. I can't tell you to borrow money or not borrow money. Can't even tell you whether that's a good thing or a bad thing for you. What I'm going to do is just share the mechanics here so that at the end of this, you'll be able to say, do you know what? I've got enough information for me to go off and do my own homework and ask my own advisors, whether that be your accountant, your financial advisor, somebody who's going to lend the money to help you understand what information you need to understand before making that commitment. Because the thing about borrowing money, you can take a big pile of money, put it into your business, and for a moment you feel invincible. You've got this cash, it's sitting in the bank account, and you're ready to do things. Now, you might be taking that money to invest in machinery, equipment, buildings, to grow your business. Or you might be looking at it saying, if I put this money into my business, I can pay off those debts that are really getting to me. Maybe you've got a bit into arrears with the inland revenue. Maybe you've got some suppliers that you're just fighting to pay, or you're always struggling to pay wages. And you thought, if I had some extra money, then every time wage comes around, it's easier to pay. And it just takes that pressure and that stress off. And often we feel that if we borrow some money, the stress goes. And in a way it does, temporarily. Until further down the line, you're going, this repayment that I'm making, or these repayments. I see clients who've got multiple repayments. Suddenly what was £300 a month repayment is now £3,000 a month because you've got multiple loans that have gone on because there's a habit of borrowing money. And if I could just pay off this £3,000 a month, I'd be £3,000 a month better off, or whatever those numbers are. The problem with the borrowing the money bit is the repaying the money. And if your lender is putting money into your business, they're not worried, particularly a financial institution like a bank, they're not worried about lending you the money. They have plenty of money to lend. They're in the business of lending money. What they're concerned about is your ability to repay it. They want you to repay it. That's kind of the rub that goes with this, which is what you should also consider if you're putting money into your own business yourself. If you said, you know what, I've got some savings, I'm going to take £50,000 of my own savings and I'm going to invest it in my business, treat yourself like a lender. Don't say, oh, I've got the 50 grand, I put it into my business. Say, I've got the 50 grand, how am I going to get it back? What's the mechanism? What's the repayment terms? Am I going to earn interest on it? Because you can from your own business. How am I going to get this money back is the biggest question you should be asking yourself if you're investing in your own money. Likewise, if you've got money and you want to invest in your family, you should be asking that question. Here, I'll give you the money. How do I get it back? And when we start asking those questions, we start thinking about not today in solving the problem, although that is the biggest driver of this, but actually tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, when am I going to repay this? And how do we know that? And this is where this business that I'm talking to arrived at, because they've got some data, they've got their bookkeeping, they've got their accounting, and they're saying, right, I need this money. So the first thing I said is, what do you need the money for? Well, I've got all these bills and I've got to pay this, and I want to also put an extension on the shop. And so I've got to do all of this to get everything working. And if we've got an extension on the shop, we can add more products and we can sell more, and I can pay off a few debts and I'll be clear. And the first thing I said to him is, give me a list of what you're going to spend it on. Write it down. And he went, oh, I've not really done that. So he went away and he made a list. He calculated what the money was for. And in doing so, he then got clarity about where the money was going to go. The money was coming in and it was also going to go out of his business. It was going to come into the business. It was going to solve these problems. How is it going to go out? What was interesting is once he made this list of things he was going to spend the money on, he actually realized that he could make some savings in the spend. He had in his mind this number that he needed because he'd obviously done that calculation at some point just to sort of get the number. The lender has agreed to lend him the money. But when he actually documented exactly what he was going to spend it on, he realized he could make some savings, quite considerable savings, which meant that when the money came in, there was going to be a bit left over, which meant that actually he could start putting a savings pot together and start having something in reserve, a bit of a war chest. But here's where we are in terms of his thinking. And to be honest with you, this is what a lot of people struggle with. You're sitting today, let's put a line in the sand here. You're sitting today, let me turn around this way, today. And you've got this big bag of money that's coming at you, which is actually quite exciting. And with that big bag of money, in a very short period of time, you're going to spend it. And you're going to fix the things that you need to fix. You're going to buy the machinery, buy the equipment. You're going to, in this chap's case, he's going to put an extension on his shop. He's going to pay off some bills. He's going to get rid of the stress. So we're sitting here, this side of the money, stressed, and immediately this side of the money, we're happy because we've got relief. It's a relief valve. Brilliant. Brilliant. That deals with the next, I don't know, maybe 3 months. Could be 3 days, could be 3 weeks, 3 months. In this short period of time, everything is going to be okay. But should we borrow it? What I got this guy to do is, first of all, take a look at history. Really boring stuff, I know. But I want to look at, is the business making a profit? What is that profit? And what do we do with that profit? Where does that profit go? That number that comes off the profit and loss from his bookkeeping system is a number. Your number. What's your number? Is it 30,000, 50,000, 100,000? Doesn't matter what the number is. 200,000. Brilliant. Whatever the profit is. Do you understand what that profit is and where it goes? Well, some of that, unfortunately, has to go in taxes. Got to pay some tax. And if you're sitting there going, I don't want to pay any tax, I'd ask the question is, do you want to make some more money? Because if you want to make more money, you're going to pay more tax. And even if you're paying taxes at 40%, do remind yourself, you keep the other 60%. Okay? You still keep most of it. You've got to accept that there is a tax bill to pay. Now, can we save tax? Can we reduce that tax bill? Absolutely. And do you know what the secret of saving tax is? Earn more money. Because if you come to an accountant and you're making millions of pounds, they can save you a hell of a lot of tax. But if you go to your accountant and you've made 20 grand this year, they can't save you very much. Proportionately they can, but not life-changing amounts. A multi-millionaire, we can change their tax status. We can help them save money. That's big stuff because we're dealing with bigger numbers. So from your perspective, make your profit bigger and have that as a bigger tax problem. The reason people struggle with the tax problem is they're not making enough money. So when the tax bill comes, they don't have it to pay. So sometimes they borrow it. The next thing that you pay out on is your repayments on your existing capital, equipment, etc. Plus your working capital. Now, what do I mean by working capital? Well, if you, for example, supply materials for jobs or labour for jobs, and the customer comes to you and says, I've got this £50,000 job, and you say, okay, I need to spend £30,000 on labour and materials to finish that job so that I can make a £20,000 profit. You might have to spend out on the materials and labour first before issuing your invoice and getting paid. And that spend that you incur before you receive the money in, you need to fund that with working capital. You need to have cash to be able to do that. Now, some of that cash comes in the form of you take on the liability from a supplier, but you don't pay them. You take on the costs and you have the materials and you feed them into your customer to do the job, but you don't pay the supplier until you've been paid. Now, when you say it like that, it's like, cool, that's a dodgy game, isn't it? I'm borrowing money over here and waiting for money to be paid over here. I'm in the middle taking all the risk. Welcome to entrepreneurship. And there are methods and processes in place to prevent that. That risk is something you should be looking to avoid. That working capital is something you need to be managing, or finances. There are specialist finance companies out there who will help finance that working capital. So again, if you need money, maybe that's something you need to look at, is how I finance that. But also change the methods and systems and approach. If you are going off to your customers to win business, why are you waiting 90 days to get paid? Get paid up front. Get paid some of it up front so that you can cover your material costs, so that you can cover your working capital. You're not operating as a bank for your customers. Get them to fund the things that you've got to spend. So working capital is something that comes out of your profit, because you haven't got it. You've got to earn some money to pay for it in the first place. You might already have repayments in place. You might already have a mortgage on a building, for example, for your business, or you might have some equipment and some vehicles that you've purchased on finance. And whilst in your P&L, the interest element is a cost, the capital repayment element is something that comes out after profits. So we've got those figures. Then, of course, is you. What do you take in drawings, dividends, that are over and above the salary element that might be in your accounts? There's you. So when you look at your profit figure from your accounting system, your Xero, Cashflow, Sage, QuickBooks, whatever system you are using, to name but a few, those systems that you are operating your bookkeeping in will run you a profit and loss report, and that profit needs to be accurate enough for you to go, yeah, this is right, that's my profit. And then you must know where that profit goes. Because if that profit pays out all of these things, and at the end there is a surplus, that surplus has to be enough to make the repayments of that money that you're going to borrow. And more often than not, first of all, they say they don't know those figures, but in their heart they do. They know they're not quite making enough money, but they say, I'm going to borrow this money because what we're going to do is we're going to increase sales. And I'm going to gamble that in the future, I'm going to make more sales. And from those additional sales, that's going to cover my repayments on there. Sometimes that gamble pays off. Sometimes it doesn't. And what I aim to do when I'm talking to our clients who are looking to borrow money is, first of all, before we borrow money, let's make sure we're borrowing good money, not bad money. Bad money is, I've run my business for a whole period of time. It doesn't work. I'm not making enough money. I'm going further and further into debt. If I borrow some money, I can pay off all the debt and I can start again. The problem with starting again is that unless you change the underlying habits to run your business, you're going to just create more of a problem. You're going to have more repayments with the same amount of profit going forward. More stress, more aggravation, more worry, and inevitably it can end up in a bit of a car crash. It can end up where you can't pay, and now we're in debt management crisis, we're in liquidation, bankruptcy, and all the rest of it. That potentially can happen if we don't sort the underlying problem. So the underlying problem, as you can hopefully see, is that we need to understand this profit and loss and where this money goes so that we can absolutely be sure there's a surplus. Now, if we look at it from another perspective, let's say we don't want to borrow money and there is a surplus. What do we do with that surplus? Well, first of all, how about just put that surplus into a deposit account and build up your own war chest? Imagine if over the next 12 months, you saved £50,000 into a bank account inside your business that you had nothing to use for. And in a year's time, you felt that you wanted to invest back in your business and buy some equipment and machinery and an extension on your building. Well, instead of going off to the commercial banks or cap in hand to a family member or a friend, pay for it. You have the surplus. So this surplus becomes a really important number to understand regarding your profit. It might be that some of that surplus, because the repayments might come to an end, can also go into a surplus. That would what we call a snowball, where you pay off your debts with an amount of money, you accelerate the amount of debts you're paying off by the amount of money you're putting towards it. And then once that's paid off, you put that into a savings account so you start getting ahead. Many businesses don't have this surplus process going. And the reason being is when you earn more money, because you're working your arse off, this person here says, well, I deserve a bit more. So it never gets to the surplus. You just take a bit more. Why? Because the cost of living at home, the sacrifices that you've made, you deserve a bit more. So you take a bit more, you take a bit more, you take a bit more. And nothing wrong with that. I'm just trying to get you to understand where borrowing money is an important conversation to have and how we can make sure that if we do borrow money, it's the right thing to do. But here's another part of the equation that this particular client struggled with. And I've seen it again and again over 35 years of helping clients, is that there's a gap, and I've shown it here on the board, between here and here. And this gap is the gap in time. Because when I spoke to this guy, and for context, I'm talking to him in July, he showed me his data to September last year. So we had data to September last year that we knew were right. The accountant had done those. I'm not his accountant. I'm looking at this from a coaching and mentoring point of view. And that's great. We got accurate data to September. But I want the figures to now. I want the figures to last week so that we can see what the profit is. So we're able to do this at the moment because we got him to update his bookkeeping, and we're teaching him how he can manage his own data so that when he goes to his accountant, he already knows the profit. He's not relying on his accountant to do year-end accounts to tell him the results. He's taking charge of it himself. Now already, because we've done the work, not only have we made decisions as to whether this is a good idea or not, but we've discovered a vital missing piece of information that he wasn't aware of. The vital piece of information that he wasn't aware of is that this number here, his profit, versus these numbers here, his commitments and his surplus, wasn't enough. His profitability wasn't enough. Business is turning over £1 million. So he's got some sales, he's got some substance. Potentially, without too much difficulty, with a bit of focus, we could turn that into £1.5 million business, maybe even a £2 million business. But where his marketing strategy is wrong, how he's generating more sales, he's chasing more sales. And the way he's doing that is based on price. He's discounting, he's cutting the price. He's not aware of the pricing in his shop structure in terms of, basically, if you're running any type of business, you're going to have data about your sales, hopefully. You're going to have it at least in your accounting system, or you've got a CRM system. When you've got a shop, you've got a till with every item that you've sold. Guess what? Never been into the software, never run the reports from there. Looking at his accounts, but he's not looking at the background system or the back end system of his sales system, getting an analysis of his sales, getting analysis of his product by product profitability. So we take this profit up here and we now calculate the profit per sale. Per sale. Now, if you're in a business like my business, which is coaching and mentoring, we have half a dozen products. We have Elite, we have VIP, Elite Plus, we have 90-day breakthrough program. These are little programs that we have that have a sales price and a cost price. And so we can work out the profitability each one very quickly. What happens if you're in a shop with thousands and thousands of items? Well, guess what? That's what your till system, that's what barcodes are for. Okay, I've got a tin of beans on my shelf that cost 27 pence and we sell them for 67 pence. We can work out the gross profit on that tin of beans. And we know how many we've got because we have stock checks. This analysis of these sales is getting us to one vital figure. What is the profit on these individual items as a percentage? How can we turn that into a percentage? Just looking at my screen, I'm just on the board there. As a percentage. Because once you've turned it into a percentage, it doesn't matter whether it's a tin of beans at 37% or a coaching program for £15,000 at 37%. The 37% percentage helps you understand and make sure that you're making the same amount of profit. Not in cash, obviously, but in numbers. So a tin of beans, if we did £1 million worth of sales with a tin of beans at 37%, we'd make 37% of £1 million. If we did £1 million of coaching at 37%, we'd make 37% of £1 million. It's the same number. All right. So the percentage is critical. When he started analysing this and analysing this based around this conversation of whether he should borrow some money, he realised there was a gap. But more importantly, a gap he could fix. Because it wasn't the fact that his whole business was wrong. It was the fact that there was bits of his business that were wrong. Some of it was really profitable and really good, but some of it had slipped. Because guess what? He's busy. There's so much going on. There's so many customers. There's so many things. There's so many products. There's so many items. It's busy. Great. It's busy. You're doing well. You're doing $1 million. Brilliant. But in amongst it, he's lost sight of what he can check himself daily to make sure he's hitting that right figure. So we are now focusing on this profit percentage figure based on his historical figures, which isn't enough. But we're able to turn this percentage and turn the handle and wind it up. And so we're not necessarily chasing after sales now, although that is still clearly a goal. But we're making sure that all of our percentages are moving up. Everything we're doing is profitable to a standard. Now, once you've got that to a standard, let's say 37% is your magic number, and you go, right, I've got to get everything to 37%, and you've lifted all your prices up so that everything is at 30%, or reduced your costs. So it's made up of costs and sales. Now we're at 37%. How can we get that to 38? How can we get that to 39? How can we get that to 41? Each of these 1% percentage increases per product, per line item, across the board, if you're doing £1 million, you can add another 1% profit of your £1 million just by analysing and understanding how you get to that percentage figure in the first place. That's the essence of whether or not you should borrow money for your business or not. Because if you understand your numbers, if you understand how it's going to be repaid, suddenly we move from a 3-month relief to a more strategic plan of 12, 24 or 36 months or more. A real plan to go, right, I'm going to take that money on and we're going to pay that off because we're still going to have a surplus after making repayments. We're getting ourselves off the bottom. We're lifting everything up. We're lifting sales up, profitability up, commitment up, standards are lifting up, energy levels for the business are lifting up. Everything lifts up once we understand what the game is we're playing, what the targets are. I hope that has helped you understand a complicated, complex subject. I've been an accountant for 35 years. I've spent the last 20 plus years coaching and mentoring business owners because I know that accounting gets you to a point with data. It's an important role to understand your accounts, for your accountant to do it for the taxman. But today, in modern day technology with cloud-based systems and all this technology that we have, you as a business owner need to understand your bookkeeping and accounting and your data and your finances and your systems and processes and your pricing every single day on every single thing that you sell all of the time, so that you are in a strong position to make business decisions that's going to help you grow the business, not decisions in desperation just to fix the unhappy moment that you feel you're in. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comments. Otherwise, I'll catch you in the next video. See you soon.